You're listening to the Tilehurst End podcast by Reading fans for Reading fans.
Hello and welcome to the Tilehurst End podcast with a very special edition for this March international break. We thought we'd take a trip down memory lane, and boy have we got a lot of memories to cover tonight. I'm your host Marc, Mayo, and before I introduce the man himself, I'll throw over to my partner in crime, Marc. Thank you very much for helping organise this tonight and for being with me for this interview.
Yes, thank you, Marc, and like always, a pleasure.
And joining us tonight, a man who joined Reading back in 1992, and he hung around for a little bit as well because hopefully he thought it was a decent place. The man is Phil Parkinson. Phil, how are you tonight?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Very good.
Brilliant. And as I said, it's just in case we need a rundown, as Phil joining in 1992, well over 300 appearances for the club, leaving in 2003, voted later on to be the best central midfielder in Reading's best ever 11, along with numerous other awards. And we'll start tonight by bringing it all the way back to the beginning then. And Phil, you started your career with Bury back in the 80s after kind of academy stint with Southampton, joined Reading in 1992 with the team in the Division 2, or the third tier, I suppose it is, in new money. So what sort of club did you find when you joined Reading then? What sort of quirks remain in your memory from those first few days and weeks at the club?
Obviously it was Marc who signed me, and I remember he called me a couple of days after the season finished when I was at Bury because my contract was up, and asked if I'd be interested to go down and have a chat. And it kind of took the whole summer to get down there for various reasons, and Reading was sorting a few ins and outs, transfers out, but I finally got down there, and very much a family orientated club, very well run club. Even though we were at Elm Park at the time, there was still ambition, just a club you could tell was going places. Obviously a young player manager in Marc who was very ambitious to take the club forward. Sir John Medeski as chairman wanted to run the club properly and build a future, and it was great to be a part of that.
Then your friend and former teammate at Reading, Jeff Hopkins, told us during the interview that during the 92-93 season, it was all about the new style of football you were playing on the floor, playing out from the back. Did you have the same impression, and did you think that that would be the future of the game?
Marc and Colin Lee were an excellent managerial partnership and wanted us to play. And we had some good footballers. We're a good football team. I felt we had a good mixture in the team. I think any team has to have the right balance of combinations around the pitch. But we played some good football. But we worked hard on it on the training pitch to produce that football. And the first year we missed out, but the second year it all came together.
Yeah, that second year promotion, because obviously you've been part of two promotion teams, and that 1994 year, I suppose maybe this is kind of me being incorrect, but in the annals of Reading history, perhaps that 2002 one is more sort of hugely recognised. There's that Curitan goal, and we talk about that and watch the clips of that and everything. With the 1994 team, there perhaps isn't that sense of mystique or something. Do you think that that's the case, and maybe why do you think that's the case?
Difficult to say really. Obviously, the club had moved to the Medeski Stadium for the second promotion, which kind of the stature of the club was recognised, starting to get recognised throughout the country because of the infrastructure of the club. And maybe at the time when we got promoted under Marc, it was probably seen as little old Reading because of the stadium, etc. But it was a good team. We had a really, really good team, and like we've just said, some of the football we played that year was superb.
And same as for the following season when Division 1. So you're also playing some fantastic football. McGee left halfway through the season and became something like a Judas figure in the stands. How did you rate him as a manager and as a person?
Yeah, I've got a lot of respect for Marc McGee. That he was, I thought he was excellent. He got the best out of me, certainly. He had a good balance. He knew who was the boss, but he had a good rapport with the players as well. And just kind of like made us really believe in ourselves. And, a lot of the work was done in the recruitment of bringing the right players in. As we know, that is the most crucial thing in any football club. But he really believed in the team and enabled us to play with confidence.
And taking over from him was Mick Gooding and Jimmy Quinn as the former, kind of teammates, but now joint player managers. How does that work as kind of as an atmosphere and going from being one of the lads effectively to overseeing everything and having to be a bit of a disciplinarian? How does that work from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it was it was difficult because those two were in the dressing room with us 1 minute, the next minute they're managers. And obviously the joint manager scenario also can cause complications, but they did great and they galvanised the lads, and the supporters were really behind us. A little bit of anger around the town because of the way Marc had left, and the club just really pulled together and went on a terrific run.
And where does a 95 playoff final sit in terms of significant moments that impacted your career? As more of a squad player, do you think you were ready to have played in the Premier League at that point?
I'd like to have had the opportunity to play, have a go in the league. Obviously, I'd missed out on the last part of the season. I'd damaged my cartilage and tried to come back too early and I had to sit out the last few months of the season. But I'm sure you all remember that was a year we finished second in the league and the restructuring the Premiership. But great achievement, if you look back, got promoted and then to finish second in the league, if you equate that to today and, to the clubs who got up last year, for instance, Coventry and Rotherham and Wickham, all down the bottom of the Championship, we finished second and that was some achievement. And the division was just as good and just as strong then. And then the Wembley final, will never be forgotten. Just such a great occasion. First of all, I think all the lads who were on the coach that day never forget driving up Wembley Way and seeing all the Reading fans around the stadium, and the reception that the coach got we all kind of had goosebumps really. And the lads performed great, but unfortunately it wasn't to be.
Yeah, and you must presume, obviously, you sat in the stands, probably maybe, I don't know if you were sat in the dugout or just behind the dugout. How was it for you watching that game unfold? Because I know a lot of people say that footballers watching football, that they're not very good at it and they can't stand it. So for you, how was that as an experience?
Yeah, I was sat just behind the dugout. If you remember, that the old Wembley had some benches just behind the front. 2-0 up. Obviously, the penalty miss, and I always remember because the Bolton fans had been very quiet. It didn't seem such a big occasion for the Bolton fans as it did for Reading because they'd been to Wembley quite recently, and when we missed the penalty, it lifted the Bolton fans. It was the first time they really started getting behind the team, and it kind of changed the momentum in the game. And obviously the thing at extra time, going on the pitch and trying to get the lads going, but we looked shot to pieces, not just physically but mentally as well. And it was just hard to pick ourselves up again and go again and finish the job.
And next season, with important players like Shaka Hislop, Simon Osborne, Scott Taylor leaving the squad, the squad suffered a downturn that year. Drew a lot of games and had a couple of memorable club clashes against Mayo and Leeds. Reading finished in the end 19th. And how did the club react to its first under par campaign since you had joined the club?
Yeah, I think you look at it, and the second season, if you like, in the new division is always tougher. The first season you've got the adrenaline, it's new, going to all the different grounds, it's great for supporters, and then finishing second, the expectation levels go up, and add to that with losing key players, and we probably didn't replace them with the quality. It was hard to replace that quality, in fairness. And if you were kind of stood away from it looking in, you'd say, yeah, it would be a season of rebuilding for the club.
Yeah, and in that period as well, you became such a key player, and I wondered what you felt were the biggest assets that you kind of developed in that period, and what aspects of the game perhaps did you feel like you lacked? How did you feel like your balance in midfield had at that point?
I mean, my game was, I was a competitive player. I played best when I had a real good footballer alongside me, Kevin Dillon, Darren Caskey, Simon Osborne, those types of players. I felt that was my bet. I had a good spell in the team with Mickey Gooden as well, but he was more industrious, like myself. So yeah, I enjoyed playing with those real technical players, and I was the player happy to do, win the headers, track runners, win the tackles, do all that side of the game. Obviously, particularly under Marc, they said, "Come on, Phil, you can play." He encouraged me to play as well, and got the best out of me that way. But I felt I was at my best when I had the balance of midfield around me, which was a real technical player alongside me.
Mm. And another year in the doldrums was followed by relegation to the third tier, and right when Reading was leaving good old Elm Park. What mistakes did you feel the club was making at that time?
I mean, obviously Terry Bullivant came in, and I've said many times before, the lads had a lot of respect for Terry Bullivant. But again, the end of that season, it was a team which was aging a little bit, and we lost again a few key players. And I felt whoever comes in has got a big job on their hands here. And the lads gave everything for Terry. They all, I think Reading prides itself on the teams who play with honesty. But we certainly made sure every week, every training session, we gave everything for Terry. But we just couldn't quite get the results. And then obviously Tommy Burns came in, and we weren't able to stay up, and which was a shame.
Yeah, we'll talk about Tommy Burns in a second, because certainly a really interesting character in Reading history. But as Marc said there, the move from Elm Park to Medeski was almost like 20th century to 21st century, I suppose. And for you, I wondered what your last memories of Elm Park were and your first memories of the Medeski were.
Yeah, I mean, more general in terms of overall memories. My memories of Elm Park now are when we had a night game and we had a good crowd inside the stadium, and what a great atmosphere that old ground could generate. I remember one of my the first or second year, we played Fulham on a Friday night. You guys can check this out. I think there was only 7,000-8,000 in there, but just the night games were special at Elm Park, and Gilksy running down the wing in the second half, just lifting the crowd and that time. And then the Medeski Stadium, my first memories of that are a bit of a struggle, because teams came and thought, wow, what a great stadium to play at. The pitch seemed bigger. We couldn't quite get the intensity of our game together in the first year or so. And it was a bit of a struggle at the start. But yeah, Elm Park and Medeski Stadium have got some great memories. Different reasons, very, very different stadiums to play at, but both very special.
Yeah, you mentioned already Tommy Burns. At the beginning, when he arrived, he played you at centre back, and then you were also later on transfer listed along with other long-serving players. It was also said that you were close to signing for Wycombe. How did you bounce back from that?
Yeah, I mean, Tommy was another great fella, and God rest his soul. I love Tommy Burns. His intensity and his desire to do well was right up there, but he didn't have a very good understanding of League One football and what was required. And by the time he'd really got that, it was too late. A lot of the players he'd signed weren't suited to what how you need to play to get out of League One. Obviously, it happens where managers want to move players on, and I nearly left to Wycombe. went to see them play on a Saturday afternoon and came back and obviously discussed it with my wife and everything, and just, wasn't right for me. And, I just felt there's still more football in me left at Reading.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wondered at that period of, as you know, kind of ups and downs and everything. Obviously, as you went on to become a manager, was there a sense, what were you kind of almost picking up from these managers and learning from the game at that point that you would then use and interpret to become a manager yourself?
Yeah, well, it is a bit of a cliche, but you do pick up bits from everybody you've played under. And I think that's important, both good and bad. And I think that's the case for really every manager I've played under, I've learned from. And you take that with you into your own managerial career.
And during that time, Sir John Badesky put a lot of money into the club as well. And for the first time, it was a bit of a financial power horse. How did you get on with Sir John? And how did he change during your time at the club?
I got on very, very well with him. I've got an enormous respect for him. Reading, the board of directors, and Ian Wood-Smith, Graham Denton, Sir John Badesky, Nigel Howe was there, as well. I hope I haven't missed anybody out. But there's a lot of the vice presidents, a lot of the people behind the scenes. There was a real strong core of people who ran the club. And just ran it sensibly. Just didn't get over emotional when we got B. Let the manager manage. Didn't interfere with the manager too much. And they were very, very good. It was a board full of Reading people really who cared about the club. And bit by bit, the infrastructure of the club, the training ground, etc., gradually improved. And that's what you've got to do in football. You can't run it on emotion and throw multi-millions at it straight away. You've got to put structure in place, and that's what Sir John and his board did, and then the club's still reaping the benefits from that today.
Yeah, one, as you say, throw money at the situation. That one infamous sort of moment was the arrival of the Magnificent Seven and the late signings in that March of that, I think is the 98-99 season. And for you in the dressing room, how hard is it because I know quite often you think about, you want to play in a team that you're familiar with, and at the very least you know what you get out of your teammates, and such an upheaval. How was that for you?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and really referring back to learning from managers, that if you go back to that season, Tommy Burns came in, he had a real presence about him, and probably all he needed to do was add a bit of freshness into the group in terms of different coaching, few tweaks here, but obviously signing so many players, changing the way we played so much so quickly, had a negative effect. And it was almost like, just kind of do a little bit, don't change it too much. We're not a million miles off being able to stay in the division, and then maybe put your own imprint on it in the summer. And probably in his desire to get us play in a certain way, we probably looked to change it a bit too quickly, and at the time it didn't really need that.
For all the latest Reading news, analysis and opinion, visit the website at thetilehurstend.com.
Elm Park then took over after a couple of seasons laboring in Division 2. Did Reading need a fresh approach by then, and what did Parks do to bring that?
Yeah, well, Alan was the first team coach under Terry Bullivan, and was always very impressive. He wasn't always at the games, because quite often he went to watch the opposition, and it was Terry and Alan Harris in the dressing room. But quite often he worked with the players on the training pitch, and he'd have his say, and he had the respect of the lads then anyway. And when the board were looking to make a change, they brought Alan in, and he brought John Gorman in with him, which I thought was a good appointment at the time. Because John was very, very experienced football man. And Pards obviously was young, he was hungry, he was determined to do well, and he took his opportunity.
Then next additional question would be, how important, in your point of view, was also the arrival of his assistant, Martin Elm? I remember that Martin told us in an interview, gave us a nice example about tomato soup and the way that the players were used to have tomato soup with every dinner the night before the game, and that from one point to the other he was just leaving that out and was trying to motivate you and saying, yeah, the next time you win away from home, the first time you do that, you'll have again your tomato soup. So how important was his arrival?
Well, my memories of Martin coming in, at the time we were struggling at home and we were too nice. We were an easy touch to play against, and we needed toughening up a little bit. We needed to have an edge about us, and Martin gave us that. And it was almost like teams would come to Medeski Stadium, and it was a big day for them, fantastic stadium, and they were raising the game, and we were making it too easy for them. And Martin kind of, in terms of the opposite of Tommy, knew the division, so well, knew what we needed to do, and got the fundamentals back in place for us, and we started climbing the table.
Well, yeah, and the end of the 2000-2001 season, it was heaven to hell effectively, but let's focus on the heaven first. And that playoff semi-final win against Wigan, we were speaking to Nicky Forster a few weeks ago, and he was saying about, he was just kind of waiting for the touch and to go down and win the penalty and everything that fell around that. For you, I suppose, perhaps not involved in the attacks, you were more of a, just watching things and praying, I suppose, in a sense. How are your memories of that and the atmosphere at the Medeski as well?
Yeah, I mean, both the away game, we had a fantastic travelling army, if you remember that day, and the game was set up. But playoffs are always tense affairs, there's so much at stake. But we had a bit of know-how in the team, and we got over the line, and deservedly so. And yeah, Fozzie was Fozzie. If you put the ball in behind the back four for Fozzie, he'd be onto it, and he used to win a lot of free kicks and fouls because he was just so quick.
And like Marc already said, 11 days later, you lost the final against Warsaw. Did that defeat hurt more than the one in '95, as you were a senior figure in the team by now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should have won the game with a better side. The pressure was on us a bit, but we could handle that. We had good enough players, and the game should have been over, really. It was a surprise result. A lot of people fancied us to win, but we didn't do the job. We didn't finish the job off, and it was a huge disappointment. And yeah, it took some recovering from that one because we all had the taste of championship football, and we all wanted to get back there.
Yeah, well, I swear every time I hear Don Goodman talking about Reading on Sky since then, he's always had that element of smugness about him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it was another great occasion played down in Cardiff, and another fantastic arena to play at. But these places, Wembley and Cardiff, are only good if you win, and the build-up's good, but you want to win, and unfortunately we didn't get over the line. Yeah,
and following those two games, kind of bringing it forward a little bit, how have you reacted to the club's two more recent playoff final defeats? Because it's because after one it's bad, after two it's kind of it's awful, but after four playoff final defeats it's a thing now, isn't it? And I suppose maybe later this season we'll be discussing it more. But were you kind of watching those the Swansea and the Huddersfield games, thinking, remembering back to your days?
Yeah, obviously when a club's gone through defeats, it's obviously a lot worse than get beat in a cup final because your whole next season depends on it, and it can start playing on your mind. But my answer to that is, if Reading get there this season, they're due a win in a playoff final, and if it's this season, they've got to back themselves to beat anybody on the day.
Then the pressure before the final game at Brentford, when you won promotion, was extremely high. Former head of communications Andy West described the emotions at the final whistle then as an enormous relief, and he remembered you thinking. Can you describe what that promotion back to Division 1 meant to you?
Well, I mean, my son actually brought me a picture of that winning goal, a graphic of the goal for Christmas, a framed picture of it. That's how much I must go on about that game. Well, if you remember, and I know the Reading fans listening to this will, that the last 10 games of that season, we just could not get a win. We were drawing games, and it was a team which had gone to the playoff final, had the disappointment of that, mentally and physically were drained, and we just could not get over the line in that season. And when it came to the last game of the season at Brentford, where we needed a draw, and yet there was tension and pressure on it, but they're the games you want to be involved in, and not only want to be involved in, you want to come out of them and have played well as a team, individually and as a team, and come out on the winning side or the victorious side in terms of the overall situation. Another tense affair. Obviously, Steve Coppell, manager of Brentford, from right there. Steve Sidwell playing for Brentford against. I was up against him in midfield, which was interesting. But yeah, never forget the goal, and when that final whistle went, what a feeling, and of sheer relief, really, because when you've lost the playoff final the year before, the feeling of relief and the celebrations in front of our fans, and not only that, when we got back to the Madejski Stadium, was a night we'll all never forget.
Everyone will remember touched by Curo, but the header before was also quite important. How was that? How do you remember that moment? I mean, you wouldn't have won the header, then Curo wouldn't be through goal.
I remember it really well. Adi Vivash free kick, and just to flick on, and Curo did what Curo does. Curo's a very good player. I went on to sign him as a manager at Colchester, and I love Curo. I love playing with him because obviously, he wasn't big, he wasn't particularly quick, he had limitations in his all-round game, but I'd run for Curo because you knew if he got one chance, he'd take it. And he was a great player to have in your team because, you're only as good as your goal scorers, and Curo was absolutely clinical when he got the opportunities.
Yeah, I suppose almost partly maybe thanks to that moment, you've been voted as, I can't remember what year this was now, but voted previously as the best central midfielder of all time at Reading. And to be fair, if we had that vote again today, you'd certainly be in with a really, really good shout of being the favourite to win it. So, and you also got a testimonial, which we'll talk about in a second, but these rewards and having, the recognition that you kind of receive towards the end of your time at the club and after your time at the club, I wanted to, how do they mean a lot to you? Are they something that are they almost as good as the promotions and stuff like that?
Yeah, without doubt. My time at Reading, never forget it. My 3 children were all born in Reading. We lived right in the town where, quite often now players commute and they don't live in the town. And, I lived there, was a real part of the community. And, I just always felt it was great to be part of that transition from Elm Park to Madejski Stadium. Always gave my all. I wanted to get into the top 10 all-time appearance makers for the club. That was kind of a goal I had in my mind, and I got there. It's just some great memories, and the lads I played with in that era, they're still my mates to this day. And you stay mates with those people because you had a lot of honesty around you on the pitch, and when you have success with a group of players, those are the lads you stay friends with later on in your career.
The testimonial game itself remains one of the most star-studded evenings in club history. What are your memories of having the likes of Gazza and John Barnes turn out for you, and Jeff Hopkins coming over from Australia as a surprise? How was that for you?
Yeah, no, it was a memorable night for myself and my family. And, thanks Sue Roberts, as I always do, who ran the testimonial for me, who's a very good friend of mine still, and the testimonial committee who worked so hard to put that night together. And Gazza, the story with Gazza is that, we were kind of piecing together the opposition ourselves, and spoke to Chris Waddle, and he said, look, I'll have a word with Gazza for you. I'll get him to play. And I knew that would be a great draw. So, he agreed to play. And, the night before he was in Glasgow at dinner, And one of my neighbours in Reading, Chris Donnelly, I said, look, Chris, I said, I'm going to hire you a car. I want you to drive up and bring him back down the next day, because, we'd sold a lot of tickets, and a lot of them was, because Gazza was coming into Midfielder Stadium, and I wanted to make sure he was there. So Chris drove up the night before, booked him a hotel room, and the next day I rang him up and I said, Chris, have you got him in the car? And he said, no, he's not with me. I said, Chris, what do you mean? He said, no, he's behind me with Jimmy Five Bellies. And he followed him all the way back down, and we got him there, But what a great fellow. And, Gazza was going the next night to play in another testimonial in Southampton. He stayed up with us in the hotel, having a drink with all the lads, everybody. And, what a terrific fella. But so many stories, I could practically speak to for just an hour just on the build up to that testimonial and all the what we had to do to get that team together. So it was a memorable night for myself and my family, and I'd like to think that all the supporters who were there had a terrific night.
Yeah, definitely. Just the idea, I suppose, Gazza is someone who's sort of iconic status has only really grown over the years, and I know that over the lockdown, everything like Euro '96 videos and all that sort of stuff were getting replayed when we didn't have football in the summer. So yeah, no, to have a player like that is amazing. And I wanted to ask you as well and talk about something else that personally for me, probably my favourite Reading chant is 5 Parkinsons to the tune of 12 Days of Christmas. And this, how, your familiarity, when did you perhaps first hear this? And also, have your family and friends ever sung it to you? And if not, why not?
Yeah, I can't remember when it first kind of emerged. I really can't. But yeah, no, it was great to hear the supporters singing it, and it always gives you a lift, when you're on the pitch and you hear the supporters getting behind you as an individual. And no, my family haven't sang it to us. I'll ask them later why not. I'll tell them you've asked the question.
And how was returning to the club as Brentford boss? We spoke during the FA Cup quarterfinal in 2015. And what went wrong on that night for your team?
Well, if you remember, we'd drawn the home leg and probably had the best chance to win it. But it was a tough game. Steve Clarke, I thought, did a really good job the way he set his team up. And the game, for TV reasons, was put onto a Monday night. And
always an utterly terrible decision that was.
Yeah, I mean, which, when you look at it, for Bradford and Reading, but for Bradford in particular, one of the biggest games in the club's history, to have to play it 2 days after an important league game. And the problem we had, that we were still in the mix in the league, and we had to go to Notts County and get a result. It was important. I couldn't rest everybody. I maybe made 1 or 2 changes, but Reading, from my memory, made a lot of changes on the Saturday. And sometimes supporters don't kind of really get this, but when teams have longer to prepare, you see it in the Premiership now, where a team will have a week to prepare for a game when the other team's been in the Champions League or something. It does make a difference. And I felt it was very, very unfortunate for us. But Reading were a good side. They had an excellent manager in Steve Clarke, who doesn't surprise me how well he's done at Scotland. Very, very well detailed, organised. And unfortunately for us, it wasn't to be on the night, and we didn't perform. I think that was the big thing. We didn't perform anywhere near what we had done in previous rounds at Chelsea and home to Sunderland and other games.
Yeah, and just to add on to that as well, actually, as the return to the Midfielder, how was that for you? Obviously, it's going to be a special night anyway, but the reception you got from the fans and everything, how was that?
Yeah, it was great to come back. That was great, and as you can imagine, my whole family came down for the night. So that the occasion of that was good, but I want to win, and I want the team to play well and be given the right platform to be able to do that. So it was tainted a bit afterwards because I didn't feel that we're given the right opportunity, and we didn't do ourselves justice because of that.
Yeah, and we spoke earlier about all of the times at Reading and everything like that. However much you want to answer this question is entirely up to you. But I know that previously, I think it's about late 2018, you were linked with the Reading job while in charge of Bolton, which obviously you didn't take up. And I wondered just to how serious a link that was, and whether that the idea of returning to Reading, I suppose, it's something that a lot of fans have always held as a real possibility, something that they'd really like to see. And I wonder how that is for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd had some talks with Reading, but it just wasn't to be at the time. I was under contract, and sometimes there can be difficulties which you can't be overcome. And the Reading owners, in the end went for somebody else. But yeah, of course, when I left Reading to go to Colchester to learn my trade as a manager, in my thoughts, I thought, one day, hopefully I'll get the opportunity to come back and manage the club. Now, it hasn't happened today, but, I've had some great clubs I've managed as well, and I've enjoyed that side of my career just as much as the playing side.
Yeah. And in the end, the question, do you still have connections to Reading, and do you follow how the club is doing, maybe with a bit more intention like you do with others?
Yeah, I think when you played so long for a club, you always have a look at the results and games and want them to do well. And I've got a lot of friends in Reading, a lot of people I keep in touch with. And like I said earlier, my 3 kids were all born in Reading. And I've got a lot of connections with the area, and always, look forward to going back and seeing the old friends and some of the old players. Gilksy, Keith McPherson. I socialised with obviously prior to lockdown. It seems a long time since any of us. Mayo and Aidy Williams. Spoke to the other day. Dylan Kerr I spoke to. Jeff Hopkins a couple of weeks ago as well. So, I keep in touch with a lot of the lads, and, we're always watching out for each other.
You also mentioned your 3 kids. And do they have also a special relation to Reading Football Club?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they were quite young when I left. But my eldest son, George, who's now 25, he remembers, me playing and following it to the games home and away. So he remembers it a lot more. Particularly that the memory they've got is when we came back from drawing at Brentford, and if you remember, the game was on a live screen at the Medeski Stadium because we could only get so many tickets. So
I was there.
They're all waiting outside for the coach to come back, and so they remember those times, and obviously the testimonial.
Phil, thank you very much for coming on tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about all these things. I'm sure there's hundreds of games and everything like that we can talk about, but we'll let you go, and thank you very much for coming on tonight.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, gents. Thank you very much.
Be loud and be proud and back the boys and make some noise. Come on, you Rs!
Shout out to this week's podcast sponsor, ZCZ Films, showing that age is no barrier to being a hula hoop.